who one man decide everything. One man decide everything. If you challenge him, you go to court. He actually controls the court to an extent that the Supreme Court, the apex court of the land, does not understand the meaning of jurisdiction, does not understand the importance of jurisdiction when it comes to law. Now let us read that verdict given by the Supreme Court so that let us find out if we are actually, whether we are lying against the Supreme Court or the Supreme Court made fool of themselves. Let us find out. Let me bring it to the screen so that you will read also. Let me pick it up from local news, from channels. Now, just one moment. Let us read. This is it. Supreme Court insists Nnamdi Kanu must face trial. Overturns a court judgment. Supreme Court insists Nnamdi Kanu must face trial. Overturns a judgment in upholding the government appeal. The Supreme Court held that Kanu must face trial. Now, let's scroll down. Supreme Court, the Niger. Okay, the Supreme Court. Just one moment. The Supreme Court has upheld the federal government's appeal, challenging the verdict of the appeal court, which dismissed the charge against Nnamdi Kanu. Okay, that is number one. Oh, what the hell? What? One moment. Okay. There is a problem here. I'm struggling to keep it together. All right. Now let's continue. Sorry for that interruption. In upholding the government appeal, the Supreme Court held that Kanu must face trial at the Federal High Court. Supreme Court, it was from Federal High Court to Appeal Court, from Appeal Court to Supreme Court. Supreme Court now back to the lower court. Now let's continue to read. The Supreme Court, in the judgment delivered by the Justice Emmanuel Ajim, but prepared by Justice Garba Lawal, held that the Court of Appeal was wrong to rule that Kanu could not be tried again based on the illegality perpetrated against him by the federal government following the invasion of his home. Did you see that? Let me actually remind you, take you to the memory lane. Mazen Nnamdi Kanu was actually given bail in 2015. Waiting for his court date, he was given a bail. When he was arrested for this, because he was calling for a better deal. First of all, he proposed that there be a restructuring so that we will go back to regionalism, where everybody manage their things and pay tax to the central government. Now, the proposal becomes something that this government refused. He never called for the breakup. He never called for secession. He proposed that be a restructuring that will lead Nigeria back to 1967 constitution, which is about regionalism. Nigeria decided to, stand up against him. Nigeria's status quo decided to kick against him, because if you go back to regionalism, you will have economic growth. If you go back to regionalism, there will be a healthy competition in the country so that everybody will make use of what they have. If you go back to regionalism, in Biafra land, you were supposed to have seaport, because if you don't have seaport, you are going to Lagos to go and build their economy, while yours is going to be in decay. So now, if you go back to regionalism, you have access to enact a law that will be favorable to you. That was his proposal. He never asked for the breakdown or breakup of Nigeria. He was never into secessionist movement. And because of that, when when IPOB, led by him, go out on a peaceful protest to create awareness for the cause that they are championing, the Nigeria will release the army. Nigeria, led by Buhari, released the army to kill, to shoot at innocent, peaceful protesters holding a flag. They were not holding a gun. They were not holding a knife. They were not even holding a stick. They were holding a flag, protesting for awareness purpose. They were shot at. Now, when the awareness, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu discovered that this issue of restructuring, it is not what they are looking for. The Nigeria does not want to entertain it. Then he went to start creating awareness for a total secession. You know what Nigeria government did? Nigeria government picked him up because he was creating his awareness from ground zero in Nigeria. They picked him up, tortured him, detained him. After detaining him, they went to court. Court granted him bail, and the bail conditions, he was keeping the bail condition. He was not violating the bail condition. Nigeria government, because the bail condition does not allow him to speak, Nigeria government started peddling all manner of lies against him. They started peddling all manner of lies against him in the media space, in the Nigerian newspapers, in the Nigerian news. Now, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu was still keeping up to his bail condition. And at the end of this day, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu in 2017, he was still keeping up. In 2017, he was preparing to go to court, maybe in few months to come, or in few months to come. Nigeria government, Nigeria military was ordered to go and eliminate him in his palace. His father was a traditional ruler. You can never do that in any part of Africa country. A traditional ruler, military just invade their house, the palace, started shooting sporadically. And the plans of the military was one, to make sure they eliminate him so that he does not go out there in the court to start trial, because they saw that he is within his right in championing self-determination. So he is within his right. Self-determination is not a crime in any law, in any part of the world. Even Geneva's Convention, it is not against self-determination. Universal Declaration support self-determination. So why is self-determination of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu becomes a crime to the extent of Nigeria deploying military called Operation Python Dance to go and, eliminate anybody that is moving in that building? You know how many people they eliminated? 28 able-bodied men they killed in the house of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu. If they could kill 28 who insisted that before you killed my leader, you should go through me first. Of course, these are animals that was deployed in the house of a human being, in a palace, without actually respecting the traditions of the land, without even respecting the man as a traditional ruler, the house as a palace. And through that, it is only a tree that learns that it is going to be cut off, and the tree will stay put. Only a tree, not a human being. So in that regard, Nigeria government failed because he was able to escape. He was able to escape while they were busy shooting this able-bodied man in his compound, in his house, in the palace of the king. Nigeria government failed to kill him, and he escaped. And even the time he escaped, Nigeria government did not know how he escaped. That's when they say that this man jumped bail. So in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the world, in your own opinion, in your own judgment, is that jumping bail? When you run for your life, is that jumping bail? A person that was able to travel without a passport, do you know the meaning of that? It shows that he was running for his life. It is official that they wanted to kill him. He was able to go to Europe without a passport because he was running for his life. Now, that's when the awareness went to the next level, because he has nothing to lose. He's a wanted man already. He is wanted to be eliminated. He is not just wanted to just put in prison or to pet him. He was wanted to be eliminated. Now he started agitating seriously for secession, because that is the only solution. That is the only solution. So in that regard, they've been looking for how to bring him back home, and to kill him. Remember, they couldn't do it in Britain because he is a citizen of Britain, and they know there is no crime. You can't commit such crime in Europe. But Europeans will enable you, will assist you, will aid you, will abet you to commit it in Africa. It doesn't matter. All the time he was in Britain, they couldn't do anything because British and Britons understand the law, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the right to self-determination. They understand it very well, so they cannot react otherwise. Even though it is not going well with them, or they couldn't react otherwise until they lure him to Kenya. Kenya, African country, where crime is prevalent, where crime can be committed without somebody being called to account. That is Africa, the land of corruption, the land of, the land where people stretch their muscles when it comes to their people, where they flex their muscles and they actually flex their authority. But when they go to the big world, when they go to represent you in the international stage, all of them will become like a chicken. They will start complaining. They will only cry. They will cry, 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 and they cry just for you to clap for them because they know you are naive and gullible. That's what they go to, international big stage to do. They are not going there to represent you. They are not going there to speak boldly on behalf of you and their country. They go there to cry. But when it comes to things that is between you and them, you that gave them the power to be on top of you, to be your leader, they will know how to be brutal. They will know how to even break the law in order to stop you from speaking the truth. That's what they do. But they will never break the law to stop exploitation or Western hegemony on them. They will never. But when you are speaking the truth, they will break the law even to destroy you. Now you look at it, you find out that this man was lured to Kenya where crime is prevalent. He was kidnapped. He was tortured for 8 days illegally. And it was the extraordinary rendition to Nigeria. Remember that what we just read from this piece, it is talking about the invasion of his home. And the Supreme Court said, even though, let me read it again. Let me read it again, what your almighty Supreme Court said here, because it is only laughable. The Supreme Court has upheld the federal government appeal challenging the verdict of the appeal court, which dismissed the charges against Nnamdi Kanu. Listen attentively. In upholding the government appeal, the Supreme Court held that Kanu must face trial at the Federal High Court. The Supreme Court, in judgment delivered by Justice Emmanuel Ajim but prepared by Justice Garba Lawal, held that the Court of Appeal was wrong to rule that Kanu could not be tried again based on the illegality perpetrated against him by the federal government following the invasion of his home. Remember, we are on invasion of his home. That's where we are. Did you see how I just narrated the long story? I made it short so that we will be able to, put it into the story and continue. Now, invasion of his house by the federal government, who is charging him of committing a crime for believing in self-determination. Now, the federal government went to eliminate him out of the book, off the book, through their military, and he ran for his life. The same man who ran for his life, the Supreme Court said that the appeal court ruled wrongly because he was running for his life. He was running for his life. Now, this case was tried in Umuahia, right? In Umuahia. Where is that judgment given in Umuahia? Where was the judgment? Because it was tried in High Court to Umuahia, where a judgment was given that federal government should compensate Mazen Nnamdi Kanu for the invasion of his house and traumatizing, the parents to the extent of the both parents died and buried in the same day. They were buried the same day because of the trauma of what transpired in the palace. They were buried the same day, mother and father. And the Nigeria court still tells us that we know the crime perpetrated by the Nigeria who is the one, the complainant, the complainer. We know the crime they committed, but we can, of course, they didn't say anything. We cannot do anything. But now, even though they try to kill you, you ran for your life. Even though it led to the death of your parents, even though it led to the death of 28 able-bodied men in your house, it does not matter. All that matters is that we are going to overturn the verdict given by appeal court, that you are going back to face trial in the lower court. The same trial that you faced, and it was quashed by the lower court because there was a crime committed against you by Nigeria state. This is about invasion of house. We are coming back to the extraordinary rendition. Let us read further, because I want you to judge it one after another. If in your country or where you are watching from, if the law is actually working like that, I want you to indicate in that comment section. Don't be shy, so that we will know. If you are watching from US, Europe, anywhere, indicate in the comment section. Let us know if the law is working in like that. If you are watching on Twitter or also, indicate, or YouTube, indicate. Let us see if the law where you are work like that. When you release somebody on bail, you go back to kill them and they run for their life. Now you say that they jump bail. You say that they are in contempt of court. How can somebody you went to kill be in a contempt of court? How can? That is the reason why the learned judges from the appeal court, who understood the law, decided to give the verdict that was delivered, to say, because of this, you cannot try this man. And the so-called apex court of the land overturned the judgment because they believe they can. Apex court of sometimes something that is the highest can even, bring themselves to be, to juvenile. Adult brings themselves to behave like juvenile. Look at this. Let us continue to read. Justice Lawal said that no Nigerian law was cited in the suit seeking Kanu's release on the ground of unlawful abduction from Kenya. I don't know if that is the truth. I don't know if that is the truth, but I know and I've heard where I've heard discussion of establishing a suit against the unlawful abduction from Kenya. I don't know how it went, but if the Supreme Court to say that they have not cited the suit seeking Kanu's release on the ground of unlawful abduction from Kenya. Now, let us now go there. If there is no suit cited by the Supreme Court, then on what ground did appeal court give the verdict saying that there is no jurisdiction to try this case in Nigeria court? Because that was the issue raised during this process of the even lower court to the higher court, which is the appeal court. It was the issue raised. So how can Supreme Court say they have not cited such a case? So if that issue was raised, by the lawyers representing Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, what for other formalities is the Supreme Court looking for? So that you will go and establish another suit on its own. The one that was established in Umuahia. Supreme Court undermined it. High Court Umuahia undermined it. They are not talking about it. The one that was established due to the invasion of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu's house. The Supreme Court did not recognize it, but he's telling you he did not cite any suit seeking for release on the ground of unlawful abduction. For you to see how these people, the same thing they did in election tribunal, because the election tribunal tell you that there is no law that says the vote must be uploaded from the polling unit through the beavers. They say there is no law that says that. Just to nullify, because they know that these are the things they're supposed to gazette into law pre-election. But they did not, because they were waiting to rig election and use that as a backup. So in so doing, That will show you that even Supreme Court to follow them to write the judgment in the election tribunal, so that when it comes to Supreme Court, it will. This is something that has no leave for appeal. So they were waiting. They know it has no prospect. So they were waiting just to kick it back. That's what they did. Now, in this regard, it is something that is very, very contradictory. It is self-contradictory. You don't find any law, you don't find any law that you didn't cite any suit seeking to release him on the ground of unlawful abduction. But there was a suit that actually granted him, that was the suit at Umuahia, rather, which was ruled in favor of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, and they asked Nigeria government to compensate him with 500 million. Was it 500? Is it 500 million? Because of the invasion of his house. We didn't cite that suit. We didn't cite Supreme Court ruling on the basis of that judgment. We didn't cite it. No. Now, appeal court is looking forward to cite a case that is seeking for the release on the ground of unlawful abduction from Kenya. Do you understand what I am saying? Unlawful abduction from Kenya was raised in the lower court, which actually the learned judges from the appeal court saw that within the ambit of the law, if a case does not have jurisdiction, you cannot entertain it. That's it. And that is exactly the way it is. If you don't have a jurisdiction to try a case, you cannot entertain it. That's why it was quashed. Now, because they believe they are an apex court, they do what they want. They do as they please without question being asked. No one will question them. After all, there are 200 million people who does not even understand their rights, who does not even know where the limitations of government lies. There are 200 million people sitting on a blind spot in a country that they do not understand the rule of law. Now let's read further. The lawyers, you have heard the appeal court to say that they didn't cite any judgment, which of course we knew, and we know that it was what gave birth to the ruling in the appeal court, but Supreme Court said they don't find it. Now let's continue. According to the court, at the moment, the remedy for such an action is for Kanu to file a civil matter against the act instead of removing the powers of the court to continue with his trial for alleged criminal charges. Now, let us throw this question again. They are looking forward for him to open that as a case or establish a lawsuit against the federal government, a special lawsuit against the federal government in a separate matter, talking about the illegal rendition and the torture from Kenya. That's okay, not a problem. But what about the separate suit that nullified the jumping of bail or being in a contempt of court from Umuahia? What about it? Where did it go? You didn't entertain it, but you want to entertain the one that is not established independently. Have you now seen how the Supreme Court of Nigeria is actually manipulating, the rule of law? Are you now seeing how they are manipulating the rule of law? Because if you look at it, you will understand that the pushing back to tell Mazen Nnamdi Kanu that he needs to go back and face trial on the issue of his, jumping bail, while the court nullify that charges of jumping bail. The court nullified from Umuahia charges of jumping bail because he never jumped bail. He ran for his life. So why did the Supreme Court not entertain it? Because it is a court from Biafra land. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have jurisdiction in Nigeria. It doesn't exist. These are the things you need to be asking yourself. Is this a court? Is this a judgment? What is this? Then you decide by yourself to ask yourself, what exactly am I doing in this place called, in this geopolitical location called Nigeria, that rule of law is making mockery. In fact, the court is making mockery of the rule of law, or making mockery of law itself. The court is contradicting themselves in the name of delivering judgment. You are looking for the one that just happened, a special suit, but you have not seen the one that is already given, the judgment that is already given on the basis of this issue of jumping bail or in a contempt of court. You didn't entertain it, but you want to entertain a new one. For you to understand that it is actually a delay strategy that these people are actually implementing. And as in these people cannot obey the rule of law. How do you think they will obey, or they will acknowledge your vote? How do you think they will acknowledge your vote? The rule of law, law is written. Law is something that is written. It is written. Regardless of the logic, law is written. And with your logic, if your logic is superior than the other logic, it works in the favor of a written law. It does not work in the favor of a memorized law or maybe newly introduced law. It doesn't. Law is written. And you cannot undermine any court in Nigeria. As in every nation, no court can be undermined. So if federal High Court Umuahia is undermined on the basis that they gave a verdict which nullified the claim of the federal government, which states that Mazen Nnamdi Kanu is in a contempt of court in 2017, where an attempt to eliminate him was made by the same federal government who granted him bail to court. Now they didn't entertain it. Now let's continue to read so that you will pick up and understand what I am saying. Any person that is actually, learned, or somebody that is truthful to themselves, will now understand where and what we are talking about here. Now, Kanu was not present in court for judgment. The latest. Okay, now let me start from top a bit. According to court, at the moment, the remedy for such action for such an action is for Kanu to file a civil matter against the act instead of removing the powers of the court to continue with his trial for alleged criminal charges. So, in this regard, that means it will be a trial. They are suggesting a trial within a trial. Now, if you want to understand what this Supreme Court did here, you will understand that there can be establishment of a trial within a trial. They're supposed to, okay, let's say that Supreme Appeal Court established a trial within a trial to understand that they have no jurisdiction to continue with this matter. Therefore, the case was quashed. So it is like a trial within a trial, which is actually, it is actually obtainable in the law court. A trial within a trial. So now they are looking forward for them to establish a new court case with regards to that. But we have actually nullified it because the one established at Umuahia, which worked in the favor of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, and it nullifies this Supreme Court, sending them back to lower court to stand the trial, because Supreme Court did not actually make reference to that or nullify that case or that judgment given by the Umuahia court against the claim of jumping bail. So that Umuahia court is still standing because Supreme Court did not judge on that. So it means that it is standing. It means that it is acknowledged. So Supreme Court undermining a jurisdiction of a lower court. You can't undermine jurisdiction of a lower court. And if you, of course, you are a Supreme Court, apex court, but you cannot undermine it because it starts from 8 before you count B. It starts from 1 before you count 2. So Supreme Court is actually undermining the lower court judgment. So what is the essence of the existence of the lower court to know more here? So people are wasting their time using taxpayers' money to pay judges who delivers judgment that is null and void. That's exactly what we are seeing here. Now, let us actually look into this matter. Of course, let's continue. They said that Mazen Nnamdi Kanu was not present in court for the judgment. The latest development in the case that has lasted for years. Friday's judgment was delivered amid tight security and followed by Ohaneze and some others for Kanu's release. Now let's continue. Kanu, who is the leader of the proscribed secessionist group, have you now seen even the Nigeria media does not obey the rule of law. They call Kanu proscribed, but the court ruled on this case few months ago that IPOB, the process in which IPOB was proscribed, was illegal. Then this media of Nigeria does not even obey the rule of law because they get their power from the upper echelon. So they don't have to obey the rule of law. The rule of law ruled that IPOB's proscription was not legal. And they are still calling IPOB, they are still calling them terrorists. For you to see that everything that you see happening in Nigeria is upside down. Nothing is working. Nothing is working and nothing will work because it is established for nothing to work, to create an institution called poverty where they will be selecting people to do their dirty job and their biddings. That is the reason why you can never move forward. The rich will continue to get richer. The mafias will continue to get, stronger. The gangsterism will continue to be broadened. The insecurity will continue to ravage you because people are benefiting from all that. Now, let me not digress a lot. Kanu, who is the leader of the proscribed secessionist group, which is an error from the media, calling an organization that is not proscribed, that the court issued a judgment. That means every judgment issued in Biafra land does not follow. All the court in Biafra land, then they should close. Instead of them being there deceiving themselves, they should all shut down because no one listens to them. No one takes them serious. So what is the essence of them being there? For goodness sake, the proscription of IPOB is illegal, but this channel TV is still calling you proscribed. Okay, let's just ignore it and continue. The indigenous people of Biafra IPOB has been in detention, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, since June 2021 when he was rearrested. He was not rearrested in Kenya. He was not rearrested in Kenya. He was kidnapped in Kenya and brought back to Nigeria. He and his legal team have accused the federal government of abduction. Remember, I want you to pay attention to this. Then you go back to the ruling of the Supreme Court. Now you will understand that there is a trial within the trial in appeal court, which actually led to the delivery of that judgment that quashed the case due to lack of jurisdiction. Now listen to this episode. He said he and his legal team have accused the federal government of abducting him and illegally bringing him to Nigeria. He has challenged the alleged extraordinary rendition in court. So if he has challenged it, I hope you are reading with me. Let me show you, because a Supreme Court is still looking for that judgment to be on a separate incident, because they believe that there is no one is paying attention. It is they have the monopoly to lie. They have the monopoly to do what they want. Look at it. Maybe you will be able to read. That's why I bring it closer to you, the highlighted area. I want you to read that place. The highlighted area. Read it. You say, he and his legal team have accused the federal government of abducting him and illegally bringing him to Nigeria. He has challenged the alleged extraordinary rendition in court. So if he challenged it, why is the Supreme Court saying that they are looking forward? They did not cite any of these to be established to challenge it. But it is said that him and his legal team accused the federal government of the extraordinary rendition. He has challenged the alleged extraordinary rendition in court. You see how the media is also biased. When they want to talk about the extraordinary rendition, they call it alleged. They call it alleged. But the ruling given by the court that IPOB is not a terrorist organization, they just say proscribed. They did not say alleged proscribed. Oh God. Hey, I will never meet Nigeria again in my life. God forbid I will never ever meet anybody who will say, in fact, in my next life, I will never be among those who call themselves Nigeria. I will never ever be among them. In fact, instead of me being among the Nigerians again in my next life, let me not come back to this world, because people don't understand the hell they are going through in the name of one Nigeria. People don't understand. When you begin to pay attention to their irregularities, when you begin to pay attention to their crimes, you will understand that everything they do, if you go deep and look toward, you will see self-contradictory. You will see these things they are doing self-contradictive. Now, let us continue to read. Remember that they said that they have challenged it in court, right? They have challenged it in court. Now, let's continue to read. Upon his rearrest in 2021, which is a fallacy from the media, he was arraigned before the Federal High Court, Abuja, on 4 charges of treasonable felony, conspiracy to commit treasonable felony, terrorism, illegal importation of radio equipment, and defamation of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Okay, defamation of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Why is the case of defamation of President Muhammadu Buhari, why did it not gain traction if they wanted to carry out that case? Because Mazen Nnamdi Kanu told you that the man in Aso Rock is not Buhari. Why did they not actually make this case to gain traction to an extent? Because if this case had it gained traction, what was going to be the end game is that there will be a DNA conducted on your president to prove that he is your president. He is not a clone man that was given to you. So why did Nigeria not bring it on? Because they know it will end up in the DNA test being conducted, or they will end up bringing your president for a trial, because nobody is above the law, including the president. They will cross-question him. They will speak Fulfide for him, the real language of Buhari, to see if that Buhari is going to understand that language. Why did he not gain traction? Of course he wouldn't. He would never gain traction, because they know that whatever that was actually, the claim that was made there, all of them were accurate. It was not false. So Let us continue. The one they called treasonable felony, terrorism, is Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, Buhari and his government released the so-called Fulani headers, which are terrorists, because the plan was to Islamize and Fulanize the whole nation that consists of 200 million people, to Fulanize them by sending all these people into different bushes in different geopolitical locations, in order, whenever they blow the whistle, they will overrun communities, they will overrun villages, they will overrun states, and before you know it, they will raise their flag, just like the Boko Haram did in Zamfara state, just like the Boko Haram did in the northern Nigeria. They will raise their flag and say they have occupied this area. Mazen Nnamdi Kanu got the intel, saw what is happening. They had already started killing people, going to their farms to farm, killing and using their cattle to destroy farmlands. When you come to challenge them, they eliminate you. You cannot do anything about it. Start picking up dead bodies in areas, in different areas. They were ravaging the northern Nigeria already, because they believe that some of them believe they are more Muslim than the others. Now, coming back to the story, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu decided to establish a security outfit that will make sure that the bushes of Biafra land is safe, because he got the intel from their insiders of their plans. Not only the intel, the evidence of what they have started, killing mothers, raping them, people who are going into their farmland, because of course they don't want you to farm, they want you to depend on them to give you food. So they want to continue to make sure they discourage you from going to farm. They started killing people going to farm. Mazen Nnamdi Kanu rescued our people from that by establishing Eastern Security Network, because he called on the governors, he called on the so-called representatives to make sure that this security threat is curbed, but they were not able to put it in place. He decided to take it onto himself to make sure he secured the land, the bushes where these terrorists were hiding. That's what actually caused, well, that is what they call terrorism. The real terrorists, which Nigeria caught, labeled terrorists, and they are actually downplaying it, calling them bandits. Now, the real terrorists were not called terrorists, though, they were called bandits. But the person who took it upon himself to protect people from terrorism, he was called a terrorist. That's what you see there. That's what you see there. Now, let's continue. The charges were later amended to 15 count, to a 15 bordering on terrorism and membership of a proscribed group. Okay. Justice Binta Nyaku of the trial court had in her ruling dismissed 8 out of the 15 charges, saying that the Mr. Kanu had questions to answer in relation to the remaining 7 charges. The lower court quashed 8 out of the 15 count charges, right? The higher court, which is appeal court, quashed the remaining 7. Now, the Supreme Court re-established the remaining 7, sending the case back to the lower court, undermining the higher court and promoting the lower court over the higher court. Okay. As if it's not enough. Let's continue. Dissatisfied with Mr. Kanu appealed to the Court of Appeal, which dismissed the remaining charges and ordered Mr. Kanu release. The appeal court ordered Mr. Kanu release. Listen, if a court ordered for a release of individual, what does the law enforcement do? Obey the law of the court. If they want to appeal, They can appeal, but obey the law of the court, the judgment of the court, by releasing him. By releasing him. If they want to appeal, they could appeal. If the appeal is in a hurry, if it was heard, they can rearrest him. That's the way things are done. You don't obey the law of order of the court, and the court is condoning you for not obeying the verdict given by a court. Supreme Court condoned the Nigeria government for disobeying the order of the court. That's what Supreme Court did here. Now let us see how they manipulated the situation. In a twist, the court then granted a stay of execution of its judgment after the federal government told the court it would be appealing to the Supreme Court. Now, how did the court grant a stay of execution? The judges that ruled over the case were removed. We are actually victimized by the federal government immediately. Victimized by the federal government and replaced by federal government people in order to grant a stay of execution. Stay of execution. Colonial rule. Law of the colonials. They granted it. So that's it. I think this is the end of the news. They actually entertained this. So in my submission in this, you will see the irregularities coming from the Supreme Court, which is called the apex court of the land, which is not supposed to have such irregularities. And Supreme Court should know better that there could be a trial in, between a trial. A trial within a trial is possible in a court of law. Now, and that is the trial that Supreme Court actually trial within a trial, which actually enables enabled appeal court to rule in favor of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu due to the extraordinary rendition, which denies court the jurisdiction of the matter. So court cannot entertain a matter that it has no jurisdiction over. It is not possible. Any court that does that is doing it off the book. Jurisdiction is very, very important. You cannot contravene the law in order to claiming that you want to uphold the law. If your law says, if you catch a criminal, you don't slap them. And when you catch that criminal, you slap them. In fact, you have weakened the case that you have against that criminal because you have slapped them. The law can release that criminal on the basis that you have slapped them. The law can do that because you cannot contravene the law in order to claim that you want to uphold the law. It's not possible. It doesn't happen.